All right, do you want me just to jump off?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, you can
Okay.
go ahead and get started.
Okay. So I want to welcome all of you and just give you a little bit of introduction about myself, if we haven't already met. My name is Amy King, and I am the relatively new director for the Office for Accessible Education. This week, on Monday, I hit my 90 days of being here at Loyola University. And what I've been sharing with everyone in different meetings is while I'm new to Loyola, I am most definitely not new to the work of accommodating students in higher education. Prior to coming to Loyola in December, I had been at the University of New Orleans for 26 years in this same role, but also with a few others tagged on, which gives me some interesting perspective on students and our interactions with them. What I'm hoping to share with you all today is just a little overview of the office and how it is that our office really needs to work closely and collaborate with faculty. And that is, if you've ever read our ADA manual, there's several mentions in that of the interactive process. And oftentimes that interactive process is really just thought about as our office and the student, but there are more times and increasingly more times where that interactive process needs to involve the individual faculty member or possibly the department, just to get some perspectives. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. And I'm hoping I can share my screen. I think I can. And there we go. Here. All right. So I am here on behalf of the Office of Accessible Education, and really kind of the baseline where I like to jump off, and I realize this is likely an overview for many of you, is really like, what are we working with? What are we talking about when we're talking about a student or a person with a disability? And the law defines a disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. And when you think about, people in your life or your own self, there are many diagnoses that can rise to the level of the disability, but the same diagnosis, may not be disabling, for lack of a better word, for everyone. The accommodations may look different for everyone. And I use the example um, to explain this of a student who is a diabetic. And oftentimes, a student who has diabetes or a person who has diabetes um, may have very few complicating issues. They may have no neuropathy. They may not have any vision difficulties associated with that, but they just need to check their blood sugar and do the things, take their insulin that they need to do. There's other students who have neuropathy in their hands and or may have some vision difficulties as a result of their diabetes. And so that person may need accommodations, because of the neuropathy in their hands. They might need a little bit additional time to complete some tasks, including tests, or they might need materials presented to them in a different format because of their vision difficulties. So even though two people can have the exact same diagnoses, their needs may be different. And so what is the Office of Accessible Education's role in all of this? So one, we need to understand the disability laws. We also need to understand the students' rights and responsibilities in the process, as well as the university's rights and responsibilities in regard to accommodating students with disabilities. And we work on behalf of the university really as almost a compliance office to make sure that students are doing what they need to do and we are doing what we need to do to ensure reasonable accommodations for students. And I mentioned it a minute ago, but that interactive process. So our role is to engage in that interactive process to determine reasonable accommodations. And that oftentimes is just a conversation with the student. And you'll see a little bit of our process in a bit. The student provides documentation, and then we kind of have to talk about it and delve into academic strengths, weaknesses, what accommodations a student has used in the past, what worked and what didn't work, really to get to what are going to be the accommodations that are going to break down those disability imposed barriers for students. And it's not only the academic accommodations that we're involved with. We do approve and assist with requests for other accommodations, residential life, meal plan, access to events or spaces on campus. And then when I use the term provide direct accommodations, what that might look like is loaning out some equipment to students, providing them access to assistive or accommodative technology that is going to help with those barriers that are imposed by their disability. When a student's taking a test here, we proctor that, we facilitate the testing accommodations. And there are times where we might actually need to write or bubble in a Scantron for a student who has a disability that would prevent them from doing those tasks themselves. A common question I've received, not only in my time here at Loyola, but prior to being here at Loyola, is faculty have been noting that they are getting more and more requests for accommodations in their classes. So, what is there an increase? And absolutely, there is an increase. So, this has been a long trend, but we're seeing it more and more. Yes, more students with disabilities are attending college. And part of that is just a better understanding and the tools and technology to accommodate students K through 12 so that they actually are able to attend college. There's a national increase in diagnoses, and that's better processes, better tools, and better means of recognizing different disabilities. On this campus and on campuses nationwide too, there's an increased disability awareness, especially regarding mental health. And I think if any of you have talked with any of the staff at the UCC, they will tell you that their caseloads most certainly reflect that. And then recently, I pulled some data from the National Institutes for Health. And that is, looking at the numbers of adult Americans who have disabilities. In that 45% of Americans have at least one chronic disease, and then 22% of US adults live with, a psychiatric or mental health diagnosis. The other statistic, and it's not really a statistic, it's kind of a fact, that I share is, well, we can run these statistics, and we're talking about disability, having federal protections, so as a protected class. But disability is the only protected class that any of us can enter into at any time. So today, I may not have a disability. Something could transpire today. I could get in an accident. I could become very ill, which causes long-term impact, and enter into that disability status within the next couple of days. So when we're talking about accommodations, especially as it relates to accommodations that you might see as faculty, these are some common, and I just pulled some of these actually from students that I was working with today. A student might need computer use in class for note-taking, assistance, or to use licensed software that is either going to facilitate their note-taking or allow them to access course materials in an audio format, in an enlarged format, or something like that. To assist our students who need note-taking assistance, and that could be a bunch of different diagnoses or disabilities. We use Glean. It used to be called Sonocent. We use Glean. And it is actually a really cool technology that students can import PowerPoints in, and it also records the lecture. And while the student is doing that, they can tag the recording to sync it with the PowerPoint. They can also tag it because they're like, holy cow, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm lost, and they want to go listen to that portion again. The great thing and the feature I think in my work has kind of hooked the student on using this technology is at the end of that recording, the student saves it and they can go back to that recording and hit transcribe, and it's going to take that audio recording and turn it into a typed set of notes. Now, granted, every single word is going to be there, including the ums or the tangent about an upcoming festival that happened to be discussed during class, but it will give them the notes, every single word. And they can use that to kind of parse it out and make a set of notes, or just use it entirely as a set of notes. Students may need preferential seating, so kind of seating in a place in the classroom that's going to work best for them based on their disability. And there might be a student who is a diabetic, to use that example again, who may need to step out of class to either check their blood sugar levels or take some insulin. Other students, maybe a student on the autism spectrum, especially for a lengthy class, might need to step out of the class just to take a break from overstimulation, taking in too much information. And it's going to be better that they sit on the end near a door so that they can do that. And then thinking of our students who might need sign language interpreting, it is going to be best for them to sit up close near the faculty member, but more importantly, near that sign language interpreter so that they can access the spoken word. On occasion, you might get this request. Provide a copy of PowerPoint presentations or class notes in advance. What that primarily is for, or can be is, for example, a student who has a vision impairment. And if a PowerPoint is being projected, there, even if they have preferential seating and they might be sitting close, they may not be able to see that. So this would allow them to follow along. It can also be used for some students for whom attention and tracking is a barrier or causes difficulties. And they will use that again to attend to and follow along with the lecture. Some students just simply want to record the lecture, have that audio, and we do have just digital tape recorders that they can use for those purposes. And then when we're talking about testing, sometimes technology might be involved, but more often you're going to see a distraction-reduced testing environment, extended time. And then occasionally, and I'm hoping we can have a discussion at the end of this presentation, because I'm hoping to leave plenty of room for Q&A, are the accommodations of modified attendance and modified assignment deadlines. So this is a little bit of what the accommodation process looks like. So the student applies. So when we say apply, it really is a request for accommodations. And so the student submits some forms and some documentation to our office, and we review that and then set up a meeting with the student. And that is where we engage in that interactive process that I talked about. But there will be times where we are going to need to collaborate with faculty on that interactive process. And a lot of times that is going to be in that area of modified attendance or modified deadlines. If you happen to get an accommodation letter through Clockwork, and that is the notification process currently, that has those two in particular accommodations, and you have concerns about those, I am encouraging you, begging you, for lack of a better word, to contact us if you have any concerns or questions about how those sync with your course objectives and learning outcomes for the course. So you will get notice via Clockwork of the students' accommodation letters. And that is also how, and I'll jump to that in a minute, how you can give us instructions for proctoring tests and other things we need to know about a student taking a test or exam with our office. But again, we do need your partnership. We do need your input for us to determine the reasonableness of an accommodation. One of the things I am working on with our faculty liaison and just the office team is really where that interactive process needs to take place, especially for accommodations about which we know there will be concerns, or are they reasonable in relation to the course objectives. So that interactive process hopefully is going to start taking place a little bit more before you get that notice of the accommodation letter rather than after, because that will decrease confusion um, on the student's part, and it will help us then also articulate clearly to a student what that might look like, why that might not be reasonable, and things like that, rather than having to backtrack on that process. So clockwork, and I've gotten a lot of questions in the last couple days from faculty about clockwork. And so you'll see I've noted that clockwork is our current online management system. We are actually looking at a different system because clockwork is acting a little hitchy or glitchy in the regard that if I run a report using the exact same parameters today, and then I run it at 4 o'clock today, it may pull completely different data. And there's some features that aren't real great. There's some features that I think could be better. And so we're looking at some other systems and mechanisms. But for now, through the end of this semester, we have clockwork. And so within the system, faculty can view, print, and save student accommodation letters. Students and you can schedule exams. Faculty can share instructions with us and upload either Word or PDF files for students testing with us. You will also get a notification when a student submits a testing appointment or makes a testing appointment with us. And what has happened this week alone is several students have scheduled exams on days that are not the same as the class. So when you get that notification, if you have questions or concerns of why is this scheduled today or tomorrow when the test is today, I would encourage you to engage with the student and our office so that we can see what is going on there. And so for faculty, if you don't know this already, you can access Clockwork through the SSO. And there is clockwork for students and clockwork for faculty. Right now, I cannot see what clockwork for faculty looks like. I'm hoping just in this interim time that I can get access so I can address some concerns a little bit better. But from my understanding is that faculty should be able to click on a courses section to review accommodation letters by course, or accommodations to view a list of all students who have accommodations across all courses. If that is accurate, I do not know because I can't see that screen. And again, we're asking, that you work with us in the process of determining reasonable accommodations. So again, we can't determine some reasonableness without you. And so that interactive process is critical. Oftentimes, students may come to you directly and ask for an accommodation, or I've been trying to get an appointment with them, with OAE, or, this is all I need. My best recommendation is really don't say yes or no. When a student's asking you directly about an accommodation, is just refer them to our office because that's the way the process is supposed to work. Um, there could be an occasion where a student, let's just say, is a student who uses a wheelchair, and they come to you and they say, Dr. Smith, all I really need is a table at a height that I can roll my wheelchair up to and sit there and be able to take notes. That most certainly could be an accommodation that you could coordinate, but there could be other accommodations that the student might need that we could assist with. Um, it couldn't hurt to refer them to us or ask them if you have consulted with us to see if there's any other accommodations or services. But if it's something as simple as that, I would say you could go ahead and do that. Refer students. If students talk about different struggles that they're having, and sometimes, you might just based on your experience, oh gosh, that sounds like, the student might have a learning disability. You can refer them to the Student Success Center, and with our team, we can kind of work it out. If it is that a student has a disability, OAE can kick in. Might be coaching and advising, it could be tutoring, but this is a pretty good hub to have kind of a team staffing to figure out how we can best assist a particular student. And then honoring students' confidentiality. So when you get the accommodation notice, the accommodation letter, obviously, the student has a disability. Um, Oftentimes students share a lot of information with faculty and staff. They're openly sharing it with you. They probably have a level of trust with you in sharing that, but honor that level of trust. I think you could talk about questions, concerns um, in general with colleagues, but sharing the actual disability related information that you might have garnered, we ask that you keep that confidential. Sometimes the student, in the process of asking for accommodations, might hand you documentation. Again, I would just decline and refer the student to us. We have a fair amount of resources available on our web pages. So we do have the ADA handbook, which has a pretty comprehensive overview of our policies, procedures, and services. I will tell you that that is under revision. The OAE team had started that before I came. The last time it was updated was 2018. So there's just some language that needs to be cleaned up and kind of organized, but the content for the most part will remain the same, and the update will be uploaded when it is ready in the exact same place. We do have resources for faculty and students, and I'm hoping to add many more over the course of between now and the start of fall. But if you need a particular resource or some additional information on how to assist a student or how do I do X, Y, and Z, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of the team members. And then, of course, when in doubt, ask questions, please. Contact us immediately if you do have a question about the nature of an accommodation and how does it sync or not sync with the standards of the course, the learning objectives, or the overall requirements. And then the second kind of caveat to that is if it creates an undue burden for the university. That is one of those lovely terms written into the federal legislation. And undue burden and reasonable, quite frankly, are terms that I think are really, really open to interpretation. An undue burden typically means financial, and financial in that, and this is based on some court cases, and I hate to always throw those out. And I actually adopted this presentation from one that existed for the office already. And there was a lot of, citing of court cases and stuff like that. And those most certainly have an impact on the work that we do, especially when there's a new case and it's like, oh gosh, we've been doing it this way and we might have to do it differently now. But the undue burden, again, is really financial. And so what they're going to say, for example, if we would balk at adopting a particular technology, an accommodative technology that works for a student, and we're like, oh gosh, that costs too much. The courts would find, if that were challenged, they would say, so in the entire budget of the university, you couldn't find $2,000 to have this technology that is going to eliminate the barriers. So that's really what undue burden means. Not that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to take a little bit more time. and prepare my PowerPoint so that I can get it to the student 10 days, not 10 days, 10 minutes before class. And that's why we're here. We are trained. We are here to help, and we are going to be doing a lot more training. So we are doing a series of webinars as a team to kind of broaden our horizons, get us more information so that we are best prepared to assist our students and engage with faculty about accommodations. One of the other things that I am encouraging faculty to be aware of and to use is we actually have walk-in hours. Actually, the whole student success team has walk-in hours Monday through Thursday from 3 to 4. I will tell you, I sit here all by myself during those walk-in hours. So if you have questions or concerns, or just want to say, hey, quite frankly, you are welcome to come over and see me or any of the team members who are available during that time if you have questions. That is also a perfect opportunity to let students know, hey, if you need to stop in real quick, these are times where you can go over to OAE and see one of the team members. And now, well, I will show you this first, and then we'll loop back to questions. So I am Amy King, the director. We have Micah, who is our assistant director, Brianna Brown, our accessibility coordinator. We do have a wonderful grad assistant in our office. And then Julia Miller has started on in the role of a faculty liaison. And that role, Liz Rainey had been working on that role as a proposal before I came on, and she kind of tabled it when the search for the director began, but brought it up to me very early after, I think the day that I accepted the position, and asked me to look at it because she felt strongly that it was something that would assist our office. And this is just kind of a Cliff's Note version of it. But Julia is available, and I believe she's on this meeting, so she can jump in as well. You know, sometimes I feel, and I talked about it just a second ago about like the legal language and the courts say and all of this stuff. And a lot of our definitions of accommodations don't really meet faculty language. Excuse me. I feel like our explanations sometimes don't sync. So Julia is there to help. She's helping us look at a lot of our accommodation definitions so that we can kind of tweak that definition. So one, it makes a little bit more sense, and two, kind of fits faculty language. And then she also has been consulting on cases where there are some concerns with students and working with faculty, sitting in on some meetings, to assist with kind of navigating some issues or concerns sometimes about students. Right. And I tend to talk really fast. I quite frankly could go on for hours and hours, but what I have found, especially recently, is that I could talk forever, but the most robust conversations are based on those Q&A, because I could talk and not necessarily provide the information or the answers that you might be seeking from this presentation. So I'm just going to open it up at this point now.
If anybody here does have questions, if you're going to bring up anything with a particular class, please just let me know so I can pause the recording so that it won't be available later. Sometimes it's hard to come up with questions out of the blue. So
Oh, of course,
I see
right.
Kim just unmuted. Maybe Kim has one.
Hi, Amy, Aaron, and everyone else in attendance. Here's just sort of a quick question. And do you have any ideas of what, as a faculty member, what we might do to get students to talk with us when the documentation for accommodation appears on our clockwork screen? In other words, it seems to be, and perhaps I could be the only guilty party here, but you just sort of, like I'll read it, and if it's accommodations I'm familiar with and it's nothing really new to what I'm used to providing, I'll click sure I approve it, and I move on. And I never really interact with the student unless I have a specific question for them, like, do they prefer to get the PowerPoint the morning of, the day before? Are they receiving it? These kind of things.
Sure.
But even though on my course syllabus, I believe it has statement that, if you receive accommodations, please talk to me, ASAP kind of thing. There's never any communication that oftentimes transpires between myself and the student. Do you
Sure.
encourage that? Do you believe? I mean, I realize you would have to say yes, but is it something that I should live up to as a standard and say, I refuse to provide these until you come to my office hours and we discuss these? Do you have any recommendations? I don't know if by default I've just come to go, yep, I approve it, move on. I provide the test, the PowerPoints, that sort of thing.
Right, right. So actually, not only in our handbook, but in our practice, is that we actually do tell students to meet with their faculty. I think that the language is should, and they really should. And part of it is, there's that level of anonymity, which, I understand some students want, but using kind of what you put forward, I want to make sure I'm best meeting your needs and the accommodations. So could you, please meet with me so that we can talk about this and find a way that's going to work best with you. You use the example of the PowerPoints. Is it better for you to get them the night before if I have them, or is 10 minutes before class, starts work out? There's other times where if a student, let's just say, and I don't mean this to diminish their need for the accommodation, but a student just needs time and a half for a test, and you have office hours after the test. It could be that you might offer to the student, what, why don't you just take it with me? And, I have the space, you can take the test. I can come check on you after class, those types of things. We just want the accommodations to be happening in a way that works best for the faculty and the student. What my goal is, and especially with those accommodations that tend to be a little trickier, right? Like the modified attendance or the modified deadlines, we actually do tell students they are supposed to meet with faculty so that we can talk, that you and the student can talk about like what that looks like, and how you want the student to communicate with you. We tell students if they need the extension, it can't be 2 days. They can't ask for it 2 days after it's due, that they need to make that request in advance and communicate with the faculty, and that you have a right to set kind of a parameter, some reasonableness on what that extension looks like. So it's not, just get it done when you get it done and turn it in by the end of the semester, which sometimes from some feedback I've gotten, I think students kind of think that's how it works. Or even the modified attendance. I have heard from a couple faculty, and they've also submitted alerts for students who, quite frankly, have only showed up for about 2 classes. That is not what that accommodation is. That accommodation is designed, and that's language we're working on, for students who have disabilities that can be unpredictable in nature. And so that from time to time, they might miss class because they're having a Crohn's flare up or a lupus flare up or something similar to that. And when it's possible, the language I like to use in meetings with students, and it's not always possible and it doesn't always go over well, is, it's not a get out of jail free pass. Being a student and being a learner, going to class is an essential component of that. And if it gets to a point where a student is not able to attend class, then are they actually qualified to be a student in that class if attendance and participation is required? And that's never a fun conversation to have, but that's why we need to have this interactive process. And my goal is with some of that is to start it on the front end. But most certainly, I think, I've had a couple faculty say, after I get the clockwork notice, can I tell the student, like, hey, I've just received this, but I really want to talk to you. So I invite you to my office hours within the next 2 weeks type thing. I think absolutely. I think there may be times where students are just uncomfortable and they might not attend, or set up a meeting or come to your office hours, but we do encourage them. And can you say necessarily, I won't do these accommodations if you don't come see me? No, because we've provided the notice, and the notice, unless we need to talk about, is it a fundamental alteration? No, we really can't say you absolutely have to do this, or I won't provide the accommodations.
Okay, Amy, thanks. And a related question, and I don't know if there are rules and regs that specify this or not in your department. And when they sign up for an exam, I get it, I get notified, I know it, and I do my end of the commitment or the accommodation. What happens, like right now, I'm giving an exam tomorrow. This student had the accommodation for the first exam, now it's the second. They have yet to sign up for it. And so then it leaves me thinking, okay, they've taken one exam from me with accommodations, and now they decide, well, I'm just going to take it with the class. And so I'm in limbo, and it leaves me just sort of, then suddenly they'll sign up to take it tonight at midnight, or maybe the system won't let them, but then they show up
Correct.
to you guys and then there's no test. Can
Right.
you speak based on how you see OAE and your management moving forward? What are your goals for
Sure.
that? Do you think this is working and I should just provide an exam just in case they decide at the last minute, so to speak?
Sure. Sure. So the I have a bunch of thoughts on that. So we do have a 2-day cutoff for students to submit or schedule an appointment. And I like that, because one, with team level, we lost Carissa Mooney, who many of you had interacted with, who was our testing and technology coordinator. So as a team, we're all proctoring exams, taking turns as the workday allows. And so having that advance notice most certainly helps us map out our days and who's going to be able to proctor at what time around their existing obligations. The 2-day is a made up deadline. Some schools have a week. In my work at the University of New Orleans, students submitted all of the test dates that were outlined on the syllabus, and all the tests were scheduled from day one. Now, realizing those were going to change. So there's different institutions use different processes. One of the things is clockwork. It tends to be glitchy. And I have had students tell me, and I've looked, and I've tried to log in as the user, and sometimes I see the error that they're getting. But we had a student this week on Monday was trying to schedule a test for Friday, and it told him there were absolutely no available times. There were plenty of times. So we have these glitches, and students forget about them because they're students, right? And then it's the day of the test, and they're like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to do this. I am of the mindset that and it causes a lot of stress and panic at the last minute, but if I have an open space and reasonably I can get the test for the student, and this isn't happening every single time a student needs to take a test, I'm going to go ahead and allow the student to test. Now, there are going to be times where the student shows up and maybe the faculty member is out of town and somebody else is giving the test and I just can't get a hold of the test. But that is just kind of my thought on it. As far as sending tests for the just in case, I've mixed thoughts on it because one, for test integrity and purposes, I don't like hanging on to a bunch of tests. It just makes me nervous and anxious. But we can do it. And we have faculty, on Monday are like, I don't know how many people I have, but I have a bunch of people taking tests this week. Here's the envelope of them, those kind of things. So it really is going to work. I don't, that's not a good, solid, concise answer. We do encourage students, and constantly send messages about like, don't forget, midterms are coming up, finals are coming up. Finals, we require a week because finals are chaotic. That is, kind of solid times where every single student is going to show up. So we really need to have those days mapped out. We need to book extra rooms. We need all hands on deck. So it's not a solid or definitive answer. But life happens sometimes too. And I hate to punish a student because there was a bunch of stuff going on. Their apartment flooded, their car broke down, they were taking extra shifts, and quite frankly, they just forgot to click a couple buttons to schedule an appointment. But again, if it's a repeat and ongoing situation, we'll have a meeting to address it with the student. If it tends to be the one-off, I'm okay with it. And then sometimes, to answer your question about like the student took the first test with us with accommodations and didn't schedule to take the second one, what I've noticed, and even in the test we were giving today, depending upon the test, the course, the student's comfort and familiarity with the course material, they might take their first test with accommodations. And if they finish it in the 50 minutes or 75 minutes, sometimes they finish it in 25 minutes and are happy with that, then they might say, you know what, this class time is enough. So I'm going to take tests in the class. The caveat to that, and we need to make sure that we're always explaining that to students, is if you run out of time and you've taken it in the class, in all likelihood, you're probably not going to get that time extension. And that could be because you as a faculty member need to run off, another class is coming in, or the student, quite frankly, might have back-to-back classes. And where you'll see those differences in times that a student might be scheduling with us is because of those back-to-back classes. If they have, back-to-back classes, because they get extended time to take a test, they should not be punished by not being able to attend to another class. And so they may adjust those class test start times so that they're not missing other classes. All right, and I see that Allison has a question, and then I see some in the chat too, and I may or may not know the answers to the chat, but Allison, do you have a question?
Thank you. Yes. So I had a question based on sort of this iterative, interactive procedure when students come with a modification for something like due dates or attendance. So, I have kind of a two-part question here. And the first is, how do I get some more guidance on what is reasonable, right? Because I understand that this is going to vary very much based on the student, and we have these questions about confidentiality, but like I am not trained in this. So if a student comes and tells me that a week is reasonable, I have no idea whether that is a reasonable accommodation or not. And so kind of to follow up on that, like what is the best way to contact someone in your office, to kind of loop you into that discussion to get more guidance on what might be relevant for a particular student's accommodation? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that was me. I had to take a sip of coffee, and I'm a very loud drinker, so I wanted to mute myself while I did that. We have a general office email, and that simply is OAE@Loino. You are welcome to call me, but really what our caseload is broken down alphabetically. So Micah takes A through K. I think it's K. I could be wrong because it fluctuates because sometimes the numbers in the alphabet grow. And then no, Micah is, no, sorry. Brianna is A through K, and Micah takes the end of the alphabet. And so contacting them, because they will have had that conversation with the student, is probably the best bet. Worst case scenario, yeah, absolutely call me because I can see all of that information too. And as far as what is reasonable, the way I conceptualize, for example, the modified deadlines to a student is not a matter of a week. Now, there could be times where the student was in the hospital. Maybe that would be reasonable. But to think of it as a matter of days. And so I always use this example. If they have to upload the assignment in Canvas by midnight on Friday, then what they should expect is an extension possibly till midnight on Sunday. And part of that also is the course flow, so if it's an assignment that, again, is due on Friday and you're having the robust discussion about that assignment, and that is part of the course design, is to process, those submissions on Monday. You want the student to be able to be an active part of that. So sometimes it depends on the assignment. The other thing students are notified of is if it involves group work, that those modified deadlines simply don't apply, because then it is going to impact the entire group. So sometimes we've tried to, and we've looked at like some rubrics of, if the assignment is of this nature, like this would likely be reasonable. And I think is still kind of a framework that we can use, but it really depends on the course design and then what that particular assignment is intended to do, kind of in the impact on the rest of the class. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay.
So kind of to follow up on that, like how much of this are students being told? Because I'm not really sure what of this they have heard when they come to me when they're asking for things like much longer extensions. Yeah.
So they have heard pretty much kind of what I have said. What I have come to learn in my years of practice is students hear what they want to hear. And what I've also found is, well, let me ask for that. Why not? If they say great, they might go, well, if I ask for a week, then I've got all this extra time. What I like to look at in the conversation with the student is like the specific diagnosis. Talk to them, like, for example, when you have a lupus flare up, what does that typically look like for you? And how does that impact? How has that impacted you in your previous coursework? And what did those extensions look like? And again, if the student, just had minor flare-ups, and, the 2 days worked, but then they started having more severe flare-ups, for whatever reason, the 2 days might not work. And I can use an example, and if any of you have heard this before, just bear with me. But in my work, in my previous position, I met with a student who had lupus. And, we talked a little bit about it. And, she talked about what it looked like when she had a flare up and what that meant for her. And it was a Monday or a Tuesday of that week that I met with her. She came to see me later in the week. And when I say later in the week, it was Thursday or Friday, popped in my office, said hello, and I did not recognize the student. She had had such an inflammatory response that her hands were, I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to the student, but it looked like she was wearing like medical gloves that somebody had blown up and put air in, like a balloon. She could barely walk. I, asked her to sit and she said it's too painful to sit. For me, that was like this kind of light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, this is what this looks like for the student. And yes, like, I mean, she couldn't bend her fingers, she couldn't hold a pen, things like that. So sometimes it's dependent upon the student. And then, you can always say, okay, all right, we've mapped this out. And then something dramatically changes for the student. And so often with the student who might have a chronic illness, it can get more complicated, or medication stops working and they got to switch it up, and that causes all kinds of issues. So we'd like to have these general parameters, but sometimes they're just a little bit additional flexibility. The other thing, again, we tell the student to be in communication with the faculty members, and what I have learned from these types of meetings and others And I actually polled the design faculty. So if you've had students who have had this as a combination, how many times has the student met with you or emailed? And not a single hand went up. And so our messaging needs to be a little bit stronger to students, but they are supposed to keep you in the loop. And the unfortunate thing is, again, the message sometimes just goes in one ear and out the other. So just consult with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, and so Dan has some Canvas questions, and I am going to admit that I don't use Canvas yet, other than doing my mandatory trainings and things like that. When I was at the University of New Orleans, we had just switched in the start of the fall to Canvas. And I had, I think, signed up for my first class on using Canvas, and then I came here. So I do not know, but I will endeavor to find out. My understanding is it's not that difficult to do these things, but I don't know.
So
And
she
that's
was
not a
just
good
sharing the
answer.
resource to those
Oh,
things.
okay.
So no need to
Got it.
answer any questions.
Well, thank you. So now I can learn, and now I know. Thank you, Dan.
Sure, it's just we have been most of our faculty have been using classic quizzes in Canvas,
Okay.
and recently we have been promoting new quizzes. So we have a little different accommodation feature for new quizzes, you know, from
Great.
the classic quizzes. So that's why I put that there, just in case our faculty needs that.
Thank you. And I am going to
you.
bookmark and save that.
Are there any other questions?
And Julia, do you have anything, we've got a couple minutes left, that you might want to share with the group, just based on the work you've done with and for us so far?
I didn't have anything prepared, so I will see what I can think of off the top of my head.
Sorry.
But no, that's okay. I've enjoyed starting the work. It has been illuminating to see all of the different concerns from different areas of the university, you know, depending on the department and the style and the nature of the course. Faculty members have different perceptions or realities of what's possible, impossible, very disruptive, not disruptive, and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm getting to understand more broadly how we can kind of all get on the same page. One interesting thing, I guess, that was a little surprising to me that people in here and maybe watching might be also, it might be important for them to know, that I've noticed in my limited time in this role so far, that oftentimes it seems that faculty members are perhaps, I don't want to use the word over accommodating, but they're afraid of running afoul of a law or doing something unfair to a student. And I think that comes from only the best intentions of trying to support students. But unfortunately, I think it's also leading to some confusion in students as far as what they're actually afforded, what they are definitely going to be getting year after year, no matter which professor they have. And so I think a little more clarity around, we want you to be nice, but you don't want to give overly accommodating responses to students, because it might make it more difficult for them later on down the road when they don't get that, because they're not technically required to receive that. So for example, with you mentioned a student who asks for an extension on a project or something, or an assignment, and if they ask for it after the date, technically that's, you know, unless there's extenuating circumstances and their flare up caused them to be unable to request that, that's not really supposed to happen. And so if half of our faculty members are doing that, it's making it a lot more difficult for the other half to toe the line and not do that. So I'm looking forward to hopefully gaining clarity in everybody, so that nobody feels like they're, you know, being mean or doing anything illegal by simply doing what's allowed. Actually, and a question did just pop into my head, unrelated to what I was just talking about. Do we as a university supply transportation to students who use wheelchairs if they have off-campus requirements for a course like service learning or field work?
I don't have a good answer. And
Okay.
I think my question, well, my question first would be, do we provide the transportation to all of the other students in the course? So like if you're
Oh.
not coordinating a shuttle, you know, for their classroom experiences, you know, as part of the process of you know, becoming a certified teacher. If we provided it, we would have to provide accessible transportation. If we don't provide it, the student would be responsible for that transportation. Just like
Okay.
we don't get them to campus, the student is responsible for getting themselves to campus, or to, they would be responsible in those cases.
Okay, thank you.
On
Yeah.
the service learning question, Tiffany does have funds to provide all students access to service learning. So they can get gas cards, I think maybe Lyft as well. And she's been working on other transportation. So it's always worth a conversation with her if a student does need additional transportation to a service learning site, but I can't speak for the other things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have to explore some accessible options. Lyft and Uber are not good. Most cabs. I was a co-chair of our national organization AHEAD in 2012, and the primary complaint about attendees was the lack of accessible transportation around the city, but more importantly from the airport. In my observation, that has not gotten tremendously better. I always think, oh gosh, if I could just get myself a couple accessible vans, like I'd have the market, I could be the Uber. But you know, that's one of my 9,000 get rich thoughts, right? And have not done one yet. So
I know that RTA does provide, I don't know how accessible their regular bus system is. I mean,
it
but
depends.
right.
And their other transportation, and I cannot think the name of it to save my life. You have to qualify for it through their process, and it is limited to Orleans only. So
Yeah.
if somebody is going beyond that, they are out of luck.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Amy
Thank
and
you.
Julia. I think it's been really enlightening, and I hope that folks who weren't able to attend will watch the presentation, because I think that was also a really good point as well, Julia, about over accommodating. And so many faculty feel like they have to do that, and then they're getting overwhelmed and frustrated too when they do that.
Absolutely.
So excellent presentation. It'll be
Thank
available
you.
online soon. And thank you so, so, so much. If there's not any other questions, I think we can go ahead and wrap up.
Just real quickly, I would, I know I saw Amy one day dropping off an exam or picking up. I just want to once again, and then express it publicly, Erin, but to thank Amy for coming on board with us. I can't imagine the task you have or in front of you. And I certainly, it's an unfair question to ask you, well, what changes do you see forthcoming? But I think that you probably identified some and realized, yeah, we can always improve here or there. And for the betterment of your department and the students that get accommodations and faculty's cooperation. And once again, welcome you here and thank you for joining us. You bring a wealth of knowledge and experience, and that's invaluable.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
And if you've got any of those million ideas and you want to co-partner, let me know.
I know where to find you. Don't you worry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.